Hi everyone, we're gonna walk through speciation. We're your hosts,
Hannah
and Edward.
and today we'll be walking you through speciation at the beautiful Gordon River Greenway Park. First, some background. Speciation is when a species splits in two. There are two types of speciation, Sympatric and Allopatric.
Sympatric speciation occurs when no barriers are present, like the spontaneous rise of new food resources or characteristics.
An example of this phenomena often cited is the North American apple flies. These critters evolved from a species that laid their eggs in hawthorn fruit. After the introduction of apples to North America, some members of the species exclusively laid their eggs in fallen apples, and so did their offspring. Thus, a new species was born.
Allopatric speciation is when there's physical geographical barriers preventing a species to reproduce. Take this paved path, for example.
The pathway that separates these two sides of forest can cause allopatric speciation because one side may have a slightly different ecosystem or environment than the other, making some traits and characteristics better for survival. This means the populations aren't only divided physically, but genetically too. These factors restrict gene flow and cause changes in allele frequencies.
The primary factor that leads to speciation is reproductive isolation, a biological process that impedes individuals from interbreeding and having fertile offspring.
Speaking of reproductive isolation, have you heard about the two barriers?
No, can you tell me about them?
Well, there's pre-zygotic and post-zygotic. Pre-zygotic barriers work by preventing a zygote being formed at all, whereas post-zygotic barriers work after the zygote has been formed. The 5 factors that affect pre-zygotic barriers are habitat, behavioral, temporal, mechanical, and gametic isolation. First, habitat isolation is where individuals in different environments are less likely to interact. Temporal isolation is when individuals reproduce at different seasons or different times of the day. Behavioral isolation is when there is no mate recognition between males and females. Mechanical isolation is when there is physical incompatibility between the organs of the female and the organs of the male. Gametic isolation is when an egg and a sperm cell come into contact but are unable to recognize each other.
Post-zygotic barriers occur after the zygote is formed, like hybrid sterility, reduced viability, and breakdown. Reduced hybrid viability is when the offspring dies before it develops. Reduced hybrid fertility is when the offspring fails to produce a functional gamete. Hybrid breakdown occurs when the offspring did not develop correctly and has a less potential of survival and reproduction.
Hey campers, are you scared of bears? Are you scared that you would not be able to defend yourself from these creatures? Well, do we have the product for you? Featuring Bear Be Gone 3000. Spray and the bears will go away. Bear Be Gone 3000 is an effective spray to deter bears while you are on your camping adventure.
Polyploidy is where during cell division extra sets of chromosomes are produced. An autopolyploid is an individual that has more than 2 chromosome sets, and it only occurs in one species. It can cause reproductive isolation. An allopolyploid is when a sterile hybrid eventually changes in subsequent generations into a fertile polyploid, which is an allopolyploid.
Have you ever preferred a trait over the other, like hair color or height?
Well, I prefer my boys with brown eyes over blue.
Sexual selection is when a mate prefers a genetic trait over the other. This can lead to speciation. For example, certain species have developed mating signals such as dewlaps on anoles.
Hybrid zones play another key part in speciation. Think of hybrid zones as a party full of people you don't know.
Say, at this party, you meet a special someone who strikes your fancy. One thing leads to another and you strike up conversation. That's essentially how it works for animals, as hybrid zones are places where no physical or ecological barriers exist, so members of similar species can interact and reproduce.
Habitat differentiation also leads to sympatric speciation. Species in differing geographical areas are way less likely to interact. For example, you're much more likely to greet someone sitting right next to you than someone a few seats down. They don't have the chance to mate, reducing gene flow between them, effectively isolating the two species' genes.
This has been the walk through speciation.
Bye!